Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Cromulent Craic Show. I'm Dillhouse.
And I'm Duffy Beer. And together we're just a couple of embiggened Egypts who are here to chat about every Simpson episode from the very beginning.
So grab a Duff Beer, a crab juice, or a frosty chocolate milkshake, and let's get started.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a while, Duffy Beer. How have you been getting on?
It's been too long.
It's been summer and autumn.
Summer, autumn, all the seasons have blended. And we're finally back.
So anything good happened in the time off?
A lot. Well, we have had a very interesting summer. Can we just say we survived a terrorist attack in Vienna of all places? So I don't know if anyone's a fan of Taylor Swift. We are, and she has a little thing called Ears Tour, and we had gotten tickets for Dublin, which we were very lucky, and we actually managed to get tickets as well for Vienna. So we were going to do a little trip, Budapest, Vienna, and of all the places,
It was Vienna.
it was Vienna. So,
Thank God it was cancelled.
and thank God, and it was very, I think it's not even that it was cancelled, it was just a very sad, scary time, and thank God nothing actually happened, but holy moly, we didn't expect to be in this, especially like if you're a Taylor Swift fan, you're just like, I'm in this strange little kind of like moment in history now, and very, very strange, and but luckily all good, and yeah, we did actually see her in Dublin, so we were very, very lucky in that way.
Happy.
And it was lovely, kind of all the camaraderie between. It was very wholesome, wasn't it?
Yeah, you enjoyed the bracelet exchange and
Yeah,
stuff.
there was a lot of meeting up and exchanging bracelets and just Swifties of every nationality, but yeah, and then also we kind of manifested. I think we manifested another big concert, Oasis.
We didn't get tickets for Oasis, but
No, we kind of, because we mentioned in the last episode, oh yeah, Oasis, those two Gallagher, because we had She's Electric as our song. Or like they're never getting back together.
and
like
lo and
ever.
behold, one episode later.
Yeah, and then of course poor Dillhouse here could not get tickets. And no,
Nobody could.
it was a disgrace. It was.
But Kylie's coming as well.
And
We're talking about Kylie.
we also manifested Kylie because Kylie Minogue randomly announced. So we mentioned Kylie in the last episode as well. Now she's announced a tour, but she's not playing Dublin. She's not playing Ireland at all.
No,
it's not fair. No one likes coming to Ireland.
So today we're going to be looking back at the 5th episode, Bart the General.
Bart the General. It's very. I think I'm going to start saying Bart the Genius by accident a lot in this episode.
They're too close to each other.
Yeah.
Episode 2 and episode 5.
Bart the General. Bart the Genius.
Bart the G.
Bart the G.
Not to be mistaken for another Bart the General. If you look the episode up on YouTube, you're in for an unpleasant surprise.
Yeah.
You introduced me to this one, Duffy Beer. So.
I think there's actually a line in. So Bart the General is a deliberately bad animated parody made by just, I don't know, some random people, I think. And it's based very, very, very loosely on The Simpsons. And it stars, I think it's like starring Toad from Neighbours. and it's just as terrible. Like, I don't know if that's flash animation even. I think it's when you use kind of the Windows draw thing. And
MS Paint.
Oh yeah, MS Paint, I think. And it's got Lisa again run over by Mr. Burns, and Ned Flanders, his children are killed, and Marge cheats on Homer several times. I think there's
with
Toad. It's like, and Homer's there, Marge, you're breaking my heart. But it's a random thing I came across when you just type in Bart the General into YouTube. So it's in this absolute just cesspool. Yeah. Oh, it's just like shit posting if you've ever seen it.
It was on Bin Laden's laptop.
I don't think that's true, but I like to think it's true.
That's what the comments said.
Well, the comments are always right. I have a feeling this was done around 2005, I think. So maybe, because he wasn't killed until, 2008 or so. I think poor Bin Laden probably wanted to watch The Simpsons.
Just wanted to watch Bart the General to learn some tactics.
Yeah, I think just be careful, everybody, if you are going to look it up, because I think there's like flashy animation, so just give an epileptic warning kind of for that. Really,
Yeah.
don't want that. Don't want it after watching like crap like that as well.
No, it's not worth it.
Try explaining that to someone. Finally,
Definitely not worth watching.
no. But yeah, so today's episode is Bart the General, so the actual real episode. And it was written by John Swartzwelder, directed by David Silverman, and it aired in America all the way back on February 4th, 1990. And
Swartzwelder's first episode?
First episode, yeah. So John Swartzwelder is, I think, up until a certain point, he had written the most episodes of The Simpsons. He was very prolific, and I think he is really one of the writers that really defined the humor. And this is his first episode, so he would be my favorite. I think his comedy really, his comedic,
Clicks with
yeah,
you.
it just clicks with me. It's very random. But John Swartzwelder, he was like a writer for Saturday Night Live in the mid 1980s as a writer. I don't think it was for too long, but I think it was like very short lived. He contributed to there was George Meyer, so another writer on The Simpsons. So he had a very short-lived zine called Army Man, and I don't really know Army Man very well. I think
I never heard of it before
no, and it's kind of funny, Army Man, and then that's kind of going to be
this.
kind
The
of episode really. But producer and writer Sam Simon, so as we know already, he was the main producer of The Simpsons. So he was impressed with Army Man. He had come across a copy, and he hired both John Swartzwelder and George Meyer to be part of the original writing staff of The Simpsons then. And so then John Swartzwelder was kind of on The Simpsons. That was his main stint really up until I think season 15 then. So his last episode was the Regina monologues. So that was his final episode.
From season 15.
Season 15, that's the episode where the Simpsons go to London, and it's a funny episode. I think it still is funny. It was still before the Simpsons got really unfunny, I think.
I think it was like in the middle of the downward slide though.
It was, and it's so dated. It's the most dated episode, I think, when you rewatch it, because you have Tony Blair's in it, who's a bad guy, J.K. Rowling, who is a bad person, and Ryan Giggs is referenced in it as well.
It's a trio of evil.
I hope there's never anything about Ian McKellen.
Yeah.
He's okay so far.
He's in it too, yeah.
He's in it too, yeah. He's kind of like, don't mention Macbeth. But yeah, J.K. Rowling's in it. It's very much, I think this episode was 2000 and 2003, because we looked up then. So there's actually a funny thing. Ryan Giggs is mentioned in it. Ryan Giggs, I only knew Ryan Giggs as a footballer because he took out the super injunctions about all his affairs.
All the controversy, I think.
So he was just meant to be a sleazebag, really. And he was mentioned in the episode because they were initially going to have David Beckham. And David Beckham and Victoria Beckham were meant to be kind of featured in it. And then I think it was Al Jean was like, oh no, they're not famous enough. And I'm going, we looked up, Bend It Like Beckham was a big movie. It's like, how do you not know who David Beckham is?
Definitely more of a household name than Ryan Giggs, I would say, by that stage.
Yeah.
Like, Ryan Giggs is obviously famous if you're into football, but I think people outside of football would have known about David Beckham.
I only knew him from the gossip magazines then. And apparently he was meant to be, like, they wanted teenage girls to love him. He would feature a lot in like magazines because they wanted him to be like pinned up on their walls.
He's like a strange looking dude, Ryan Giggs.
It's just. But anyway, back to John Swartzwelder, who also you should pin up on your wall. Yeah, because you would see John Swartzwelder. He I think nowadays he kind of like he's a man in his 70s now at this age, but like he used to write like kind of absurdist novels, science fiction kind of detective stories, and something like he has one called The Time Machine did it. And his main writing kind of style on The Simpsons was kind of having kind of
Strange people popping up. Like,
very old-timey references. Just they're strange kind of old Americana. So apparently, like, he would find funny to put things like banjo playing hobos or just 19th century baseball players. All these, he'd have these strange old references. And
Gabbo,
Gabbo, yeah, pantless singing old timers,
the
carnival
carnies,
children, yeah, just kind of random little that I suppose like you do associate with kind of an old timey America.
Midwest stuff, kind of.
Yeah, and I think he's been described. John Swartzwelder himself has been described as being a very hardcore conservative. So he's a guns right advocate, and he's an anti-environmentalist, and I think like Herman, the character Herman, Matt
Based on.
Groening said that was based on Swartzwelder, with the exception of he had like Bosch's arms and he's also very reclusive, and as of yet, and like we're in 2024 now, so I think 2021 he gave a interview, like his only interview to date, and that was for the New Yorker. He sometimes they'll have writers on the Simpsons to do like say the audio commentaries, and I do know that he would never appear, even though if the episode was mainly written by him. But I do remember he was on the commentary accidentally for the Cartridge Family, so that was season 9. And they rang him up during the commentary. They're like, "We're going to call him. Yeah, we're getting his number there." And they ring him up, and he's cooking. They're like, "What are you doing, John?" And you're like, "I'm cooking a steak." And he was just sort of like, I think he ended the call. They're like, "Oh, thanks, John." Anyway, he goes, "Yeah, yeah." He goes, "Tough thing. This isn't even John." And then he just hangs up.
Oh, so he's real antisocial kind of
Very
guy.
antisocial. He has been on The Simpsons though, making cameos. Like they would purposely draw him into the episode because he's kind of like a big mustachioed man. So he's featured as like a patient in the psychiatric hospital. He was one of the visitors in the bordello. He's kind of,
Oh,
I think we've seen him walk into court in an episode. But yeah, he's a very strange style. I think that's one of his things is just having very random old timey humor. I think they've even named it like Swartzweldian.
Swartzweldian humor.
Yeah.
He introduced the word, or he's taking credit for introducing the word meh onto The Simpsons.
Yeah, apparently he wrote meh. I think he had heard it somewhere else or someone used it, but he does claim credit for actually like putting it in the show, and I think that's where the term meh. I actually had to explain meh to someone.
Because they never heard it before.
I had a lecturer, and I wasn't using it seriously, but we were chatting away, and it was like, "What's a term?" He goes, "For something that, or you just have no opinion whatsoever. What response could you give to that?"
Meh.
And then I went, "Meh." And then he honestly didn't know it. And then I was like, "Oh, what's the term meh?" When you're like, "It's just so really meh." And he was fascinated by the term then.
It's not worth an opinion. Meh.
Meh, meh. And yeah, I just laughed. There was a snippet I saw from that 2021 interview, which the John Swartzwelder one, and he was asked things that he just hates, like comedy wise, and he hates monkeys.
Monkeys.
Monkeys. He was like, "No monkeys. Monkeys aren't funny, and they're ruining comedy." And he goes, if you use a monkey, it's like just for the love of God. He's like, "Don't put a hat on them."
That some people were dressing monkeys in suits and stuff in the 80s, the early 90s.
Ronald Reagan was in a monkey film.
Put that chimp to bed.
Put
Bobo.
Bobo.
It's a classic.
Isn't that like, doesn't like, that was a big thing in the 80s and 90s though. Like Tom Hanks, I think, has a movie with a monkey.
Yeah.
Definitely your man from Joey. I think there's a film where Joey, I just call him Joey, your man Matt LeBlanc from,
Matt LeBlanc,
Joey
yes.
from Friends. And
I think that's what everybody probably calls him.
And he's in a film where he plays baseball with a monkey. I think the monkey helps him like get back in the game. I don't know.
Probably saw like
I saw the poster of it, and that's just exactly what I get from it.
they probably saw like Jane Goodall was probably living with all the chimps out in
Yeah.
the jungle at that stage, and they were like, "Oh, we can actually take these in and do stuff with them."
Yeah.
John Swartzwelder was like, "No."
What's his opinion of like the wild thornberries then? I like your man in that.
It's got monkeys. I'm sorry, Duffy Beer.
That's not good enough. John Wilder hates me. But yeah, so that's I think we'll get into the episode context, will we now?
Yeah, it's a lot of good stuff.
I could rant about monkeys all day.
Oakley dokley.
So Bart the General aired in America all the way back on February 4th, 1990. Duffy Beer, what was happening around the world when all of this aired? What was the cultural context? Was it time for the reeling in the years?
Reeling in the years and the Duff Beers. So yeah, around this time, Black Rain was that was the #1 movie in the UK box office. So Black Rain, it's a 1989 American neo-noir action thriller.
Good movie.
Yeah.
Good movie. Any fans of Blade Runner, I think, would like it.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. It's directed by Ridley Scott, stars Michael Douglas. I love Blade Runner, so I think I'd like it.
Similar kind of atmosphere. Obviously, it's not a cyberpunk movie, but it's
kind of that synth music's in it,
yeah,
is it? Yeah.
Kind of, shots of cityscapes and streets and stuff.
Oh, I like
back
that.
alleys.
Grimy, rainy.
but calming and zen. There's zen to be had in the grime, you could say.
Zen in the rain.
Yeah.
And and then not to be mistaken with another Black Rain movie, also out in 1989. So it's a Japanese drama, and it's filmed. It's directed by Shohei Imamura. I'm so sorry for that pronunciation. Who was a key figure in the Japanese New Wave. So this is very different from what I imagined the Michael Douglas
Scott
movie is.
I think that's one we got to check out, Duffy Beer.
I think so. It's the story centers on the aftermath of the atomic bombing of Hiroshima and its effect on the surviving family. So it's like Treads in Japan. Treads
Real
in
Treads.
Japan. Well, unfortunately, Hiroshima did happen. Yeah. At least Treads is kind of... If anyone doesn't know about Treads, it's like a what-if scenario if a bomb went off in... Where is it? In England somewhere, but it's like...
Up in northern England. So kind of similar kind of town to like what you'd find in Ireland.
Yeah, it's Treads is horrific from the few clips I've seen of it. I don't want to ever watch it, ever.
I've seen it before, and I would spare yourself the viewing pain.
Yeah, I don't want to. But so I think this one is basically like the actual real life scenario of Treads. So yeah, just it's strange that two movies at the 1 year Black Rain, because I was like, oh, you can get Black Rain so easily on YouTube, and then there was this Japanese movie, and I was like, wait a minute,
where's Michael Douglas?
Oh, and then meanwhile in the USA we had Driving Miss Daisy again. So the Morgan Freeman won't get off the road.
He's still driving.
Okay. He's like, Roadhog.
Get off the road.
And then Nothing Compares to You by Sinead O'Connor was the Irish and UK #1 song. So I think now Sinead O'Connor's going to be in the charts for the next while. So on the Irish side anyway. So, and then
the golden years.
Yeah. I only really know only two like Sinead O'Connor songs, but they're good ones. But the music video, I actually think it's kind of interesting. The music video is directed by John Maybury, who directed Love is the Devil, a study for a portrait of Francis Bacon. So it's about Francis Bacon, the Irish artist, and Derek Jacobi plays him, and who's Daniel Craig is his boyfriend in it, and it's very good from what I remember, and it's very good casting. I think someone like Toby Jones would be great at playing Francis Bacon.
Do you like Toby Jones? You think he's very
Colin Meaney could play him as well.
That would be great.
I think he could pull it off. They've got the same haircut.
I was on the Viking River cruise recently, and he mentioned Francis Bacon, and nobody in the wee boat busting knew Francis Bacon was. No. It's very surprising.
They were like, is he related to Kevin Bacon?
Yeah, I think so.
I think Francis Bacon's actually related to remember there was another Francis Bacon back in the sort of Stuart times. He was he kind of discovered about circulation, I think. Yeah. And they actually are, I think he is a descendant, yeah. because
There's
he
a
would have
blood
been kind
relation.
of very Anglo-Irish, very posh Irish.
Oh,
Yeah, history lesson for. So a few news events from around this time as well.
woo.
Yay! On February 4th, 1990, 10 Israeli tourists are murdered in the Cairo bus attack, which was claimed by the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Moving on the 6th of February 1990, so just shortly after this episode, in Hollywood, Billy Idol was involved in a serious motorcycle accident that nearly cost him a leg.
God.
A leg and an arm because the insurance was so expensive.
Oh.
But yeah, he was hit by a car when he ran a stop sign, and he was on a motorbike. So he was coming home from the studio one night, and he required a steel rod to be placed in his leg. Poor Billy Idol. So Billy Idol's the guy that sings like, nice day for a white wedding.
For a steel leg.
Steel leg. He was very kind of like the early MTV punk. I don't think he was that punk. I think he was kind of like...
He tried to be kind of counterculture, Sex Pistols kind of.
He was no Johnny Rotten. He was more kind of like kind of what Blur would do for the chavvy kind of, the way Blur,
Yeah,
the lads try and act low, like, oh, we're working class.
But they're quite puffed.
But they're quite posh. But maybe Billy Idol. I don't know anything about Billy Idol's home life when he was growing up. He could have been a real rags to riches. But I think it's so he was hospitalized and he vowed. This is kind of a nice, wholesome thing. He vowed to stop wearing clothing featuring the Confederate flag after a black employee tending to him explained his feelings on it.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
So he was like receptive of like.
Yeah, I think that's just the sort of thing that, because I think he used the Confederate flag a lot on his guitar. So ironically, on his 1990 album Charmed Life, the song Love Unchained was inspired by a friend of Idol's who died in a motorcycle accident. And yeah, I just find all these snippets about Billy Idol it's like, apparently he was meant to be in, do you know The Doors, the Oliver Stone film?
The movie with Val Kilmer.
Val Kilmer, that's very good casting. Val Kilmer is Jim Morrison. But due to his injuries, the role was reduced almost to a bit part. And then he was also meant to be, so Billy Idol was meant to be T-1000 in Terminator 2 Judgment Day. So it was recast entirely then as a result of the accident. So he was meant to be kind of the guy, he gets his head melted.
Yeah. I wonder if if that had happened, would he have been more kind of hammy in the role or something? Or...
Yeah, I think it would have been kind of like Sting in Dune.
That's what I think, because the guy playing T-1000 actually plays it very well.
Very
cold and stuff.
Yeah, it's another alternative movie. Oh.
I could imagine Billy Idol like doing cheesy stuff, like copying the Arnold Schwarzenegger catchphrase. Oh, I'll be back, mate.
And yeah, and then another thing, while in recovery, he was interviewed by American music journalist Legs McNeil. And McNeil noticed the electronic muscle stimulator on Idol's leg and referred to him as a cyberpunk, citing the cyborg qualities of his appearance. So his big steel leg.
Leave it to Legs McNeil to
Legs
spot
McNeil.
the leg
Hey, legs.
enhancements.
And this led to Idol taking a serious interest in cyberpunk fiction and technology. So he technically did succeed at becoming an android. So he might have not been in Terminator, but he became a real life robot.
Very cool.
Yeah. So I think that's enough of our little context. Should we
Context for today.
move on to the next part of the show?
Ay, caramba!
So, looking at the full episode of Bart the General now, Duffy Beer, we start off a bit different to the other ones, don't we? There's no couch gag or intro, really.
Yeah, the episode was running too long to use the normal opening sequence, so it doesn't feature a chalkboard gag or a couch gag. So all the usual stuff, really.
Just kind of shows the house and then goes like...
Yeah, and it's just like a still of the house, and like apparently David Silverman, who's the director, He was kind of stressed out. He was doing storyboards for this episode while also directing Bart the Genius.
And if you remember the Bart the Genius episode that we did, you know that would have been a stressful time for him.
Yeah, the poor guy.
That was the one with all the colours and that. And
yeah, they got the stuff back from, the animators, and they're like, oh, how to salvage some of this stuff. And so poor David Silverman, yeah. So this episode, it just features, it goes to the Simpson house, and yeah, it's one of the first, I think, this episode and the other, Life on the Fast Lane, they both just used a shorter opening sequence. I think they're like the only episodes that do that. I can't really think of, apart from like your Treehouse of Horrors and all that, a lot of them used the usual opening.
I think the rest of them in season 1 do have the opening, and it's just that the couch gags are kind of, they're not even really gags,
and
just popping out of the chair kind of.
Yeah, and the first obviously the first season uses a different opening anyway, so it's all the people at the bus stop. It's already very long, because the way like other seasons, certain episodes might cut to just Homer running, like they're like, oh, and it'll cut to him or something that way, and then it's the couch gag and they always have the chalkboard gag and they always have the couch gag though. But so this one, it starts a bit boring. Yeah, so the episode begins then inside the Simpsons kitchen, where Lisa is baking cupcakes to bring to Miss Hoover for her birthday.
Cupcakes, but they look more like muffins.
Yeah, they're a bit brown and dry looking, aren't they? Like, bran muffin kind of things.
Good, nice bran muffin for the teacher.
A couple of scones or something. Yeah, and then there's a whole thing of Bart wants a cupcake, and Lisa's like, kind of, no, these are for Miss Hoover, because she's a little swat.
Yeah. And then she gives him one on the bus, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because she's like, okay, close your eyes. And then she drops it on the ground and picks it up and stuffs it in his mouth.
Yeah.
5-second rule.
5-second rule, it's grand.
I wouldn't be too bothered with that. I'd be happy enough to get my muffin.
Yeah, and he's like, oh, thanks, Lisa, you're the best sister ever. So once in the schoolyard, then Lisa's showing off her box of cupcakes to her friends, and then one of Nelson's minions. So
for people like who would have started The Simpsons like with the more popular seasons, I don't think he really has the minions in it, doesn't
no,
he? So this is like obviously a wee thing that they were toying around of, like, we'll give him these two little stooges,
and they have like, they organize his meetings, kind of like his bullying meetings for him.
They're like, I'll pinion
for a beat up around this time. Yeah, so he has I think they're only credited like on their like IMDb or something as it's like Yellow Weasel and Black Weasel. I think like Weasel number 1, Weasel number 2, but they obviously were not popular enough to get names down the line.
Yeah.
So one of the minions snatches one of the cupcakes and then begins to eat them all. Like, he stomps on the box and he's being just
an
asshole.
Arse, yeah.
It's just like, and so another weird thing, so Yellow Weasel / Black Weasel, they're voiced by different voice actresses. So you have your usual kind of like Pamela Hayden and that, Nancy Cartwright, obviously the go-to ones,
kids voice actresses.
Yeah, and then in this one they're voiced by Susan Blue, who's in this episode and the next episode, owning Lisa. And then also the other minion was voiced by Joanne Harris. So she kind of voiced Lewis and Richard and other side characters until like season 4. She voiced like the barmaid in the Flaming Moe episode. It's just strange because they're kind of, you think of your go-to. It seems so unnecessary to bring in other.
They usually just like kind of reusing a voice actor who's already there instead of getting new ones in.
A new one, like
unless it's a celebrity guest or something, or a new major character.
Yeah, like
even
Meryl.
Then they'll just kind of reuse someone. Like
Meryl Streep voices, Helen Love, Reverend Lovejoy's daughter.
Yeah,
and it's like, Jesus, you wouldn't recognize her voice at all. It seems so unnecessary. But Bart, did
a good job at the weasels though. It made the sound weaselly enough.
You're like, hey, yeah. So Bart comes over to Lisa's rescue and attacks the minion, and the leader of the minions, or the bullies in this case, Nelson Mutz, then appears, and this is Nelson's first episode. So
Nelson must really like the minions because he comes over to stand up for them.
He's like, leave my minions alone. Well, he's not
like,
actually.
I love that one.
He's my favorite minion. Matt Groening. So yeah, this is Nelson's first appearance, and Matt Groening apparently named Nelson after the wrestling hold of the same name, a Nelson hold.
Quite fitting then if he's going around getting
Yeah.
people into Nelson holds,
Yeah,
headlocks and stuff.
again. Yeah, and lives up to the name, I suppose. And it's so in the original script, say like on the DVD special features, there's actually no voice actor listed for Nelson. So you have all your usual kind of Dan Castaneda and whoever's voicing who, and Nelson's actually blank on it. So this is before Nancy Cartwright was cast to do him. So American voice actress Dana Hill was first supposed to provide Nelson's voice, and she even attended the read through of the episode. So I wouldn't be too familiar with Dana Hill. She was an actress and a voice actress, so she voiced Goofy's son Max on Goof Troop. I don't know about the films, but I think on the TV show, and also
Not the Goofy movie, legendary classic.
That is a great movie. And Jerry in Tom and Jerry the movie, so when they sing.
Yeah.
But it's really sad though, because she had diabetes, and she died at only 32 from complications from diabetes.
Oh.
So now that's not the reason she wasn't. So I don't think there's an actual known reason why she didn't attend for the recording session. So Nancy was just asked, and she was just assigned a role.
Well, Dana Hill must have been a respected voice actress already at that time, in her 20s or early 30s.
Very prolific, yeah.
It's quite big roles, and especially voice acting legend.
Yeah, and the idea that again they were going to get, different voice actors and actresses to play kind of, what did they kind of predict for Nelson? Was he going to be a bigger character? I think obviously in season 1, the way even in Homer's Odyssey, it looked like the twins were going to be major characters.
Yeah.
And maybe the minions, Nelson and the minions were meant to be kind of,
Yeah, I think it's even funny seeing the likes of Milhouse, who went on to become a major character in the season 1, because he's just kind of the same level of character as Lewis, or one of those school kids.
Lewis and is a Richard, they're kind of, I think all equal friends of Bart, and then obviously Milhouse is his best buddy, kind of. Yeah.
But per Dana Hill, yeah, she was.
Yeah, and so anyway, Nelson here, he comes over and he breaks up the fight. So he picks Bart up, and Bart's blindly swinging his fists around, and one of Bart's punches lands and gives Nelson a bloody nose. It's not even a big punch. It's he's just kind of, his fists are
it's just wild swinging.
Wild swinging, and then next thing they're like, Nelson, you're bleeding, and then he's like, oh no, it's he's used to being covered in other people's blood, the blood of his victims and that. And then it's he's like, hold on a second, you made me bleed my own blood.
So Nelson faced with his own mortality.
He's not, invincible. And Bart insists, oh no, it was an accident. And he's like, oh, everyone around can back me up. And then, so there's this awkward joke I find. So he's like, oh, everyone can back me up. And then there's just the wind blowing, which is kind of a funny little cue of,
nobody's going to
an
get
awkward silence.
Nelson,
yeah, but it seems the writers just weren't very confident with the joke, because, rather than that just being subtle and the gag itself is just the silence, Bart's there and he just explains, uh-oh, a cold wind.
Instead of just having the whoosh, whoosh, and all the kids just standing looking at him.
Yeah, and I think then, and obviously kind of later episodes, that they would just be more confident in their kind of more kind of jokes like that, really more.
They'll let the visuals gags or the sounds do the speaking for them.
Yeah, rather than oh, look, oh wow, just hammered in. And then so Nelson threatens Bart. He's like, I'll get you after school. And then Principal Skinner comes along and he's like, oh yeah, come on, Bart, now he'll get you after school, he'll see you. Kind of, it's there's learning afoot. And poor Bart.
So back inside the classroom, Bart is worried and he's having kind of a cool hallucination sequence.
Yeah, it's just before the big showdown, he imagines this gigantic Nelson who's he's just completely unfazed. Bart's throwing knives at him and he's shooting him, and you definitely could not get away with this nowadays. Like,
No, pre-Columbine.
Pre-Columbine, it was just a school shooting, Bart.
Not nowadays.
I miss those kind of big dream sequences.
Yeah, you were telling me, you made a good point of beer before about they're kind of like very classic Chupo trademark. Like there's a
Yeah,
lot of
you
them
know
in
the way
Rugrats and
in
stuff.
Rugrats they'd have all these dream like they'd be so trippy, and I know they still have dream scenarios, kind of probably in current episodes, but it's not the same. They're not just this surreal kind of nightmarish stuff.
Fever dream.
Yeah, and Nelson. So Bart's like firing, just knives and guns at him and everything, and Giant Nelson's there, laughs at him, but it's not his like signature haw haw, which was an ad lib apparently by Nancy Cartwright. It's just he's just like hey.
The haw haw would come a bit later than this.
Yeah, I think around season 2 or so. But yeah, Nelson just laughs him ho and eats him, and yeah, kind of like it kind of brings me back to the dream sequence like that was in Bart the Genius. Remember when he's on the train?
Oh, that's a very cool and
Yeah,
very
like
New
that.
Yorker style kind of
Yeah, the
drawings
animation
and stuff.
but
It's really experimental.
yeah, they kind of just went all out really. But Milhouse then wakes him up really, and he advises Bart to just go tell Principal Skinner about the whole thing with Nelson, and Bart insists I can't squeal and break the schoolyard code.
Oh, you can't squeal. You'd be in
Oh,
so much more trouble.
I don't know. Like in our school, I don't know if this was in our school. You would stick up like your index finger, and you'd be like, "I'm telling," and it was like a big threatening thing. Like people would be like, "No, don't tell."
Don't tell him.
It's like you had that power. But no, I suppose snitches get stitches really in this school.
Yeah, it's the school of hard knocks.
Yeah, but and then like Bart's doing no work today because then he has another daydream in class about his own funeral then. And at the funeral, the family's there mourning him, and I love it. Bart, like the way it's drawn is so funny. Bart's just in the coffin, and he's these little X's on his eyes.
Kind of like an old newspaper comic when they're drawing somebody who's dead or
Yeah,
something.
when you draw someone dead, like, or when you do like little doodles in school or whatever, and it's just Principal Skinner's walking by, and he's like, "Oh, the nurse did a great job reconstructing his face after the fight."
He got so badly pummeled that
Unrecognizable. And Skinner's just like going to Bart, oh goodbye son, our homework really was a waste of your time. And then Milhouse, thanks Bart, we got the day off school for this. And Homer's like, I got the day off work.
and then Homer has to pretend to cry.
And then he's pretending to cry. I love the way Bart, in his own vision, Homer doesn't care about Bart. It's like my own father wouldn't give a crap. And Lisa lovingly places a cupcake on Bart's forehead, reflecting on how the fight was her responsibility, which I don't really get because it wasn't. It was just like he was going to do something, probably go over.
Doesn't she say something that's like, if only I had given you that cupcake on the bus, but it was like nothing to do with that?
No, I suppose it's the cupcakes were like the MacGuffin for why the the weasel fellow went over to him. But yeah, don't take it. Don't take it out on yourself, Lisa. And Nelson then takes this cupcake off Bart's forehead, off Bart's corpse. And he's like, one for the road. And then he gives him another punch.
Just to finish him when he's dead.
Yeah. He's like, one for the road. And so then back in reality after school, a nervous Bart is just darting around the playground, hoping to avoid Nelson. And yeah, Nelson's just ready for him.
He's trying to sneak out of the school, and then he comes around the corner, isn't it? And Nelson's standing there.
It's really like, I suppose everyone in school always had that thing where it's like someone was there and you're like trying to avoid them. You're like, oh.
Yeah, give me away.
But and Nelson then he batters him.
It's just a barrage of fists hitting Bart's face.
It's like, Jesus, Nelson. Like, this is going to kill. This is one punch down kind of stuff. And then poor, like, Bart's still conscious. I don't know how. And he's thrown into a garbage can by the minion fellas. And Nelson threatens to like beat him up again the next day, and they roll him down a hill. And again, there's a really awkward line here that I think they just were adding kind of after lines,
Quips
really.
and non sequiturs,
because the thing rolls down the hill, and I suppose they were like, oh, there's no joke really from that. So there's an awkward line where Bart, you can hear Bart saying like, oh, he's hard to love. It's
It's
so
not
it's so
really,
yeah, it's really
doesn't
naff.
really tie in with anything
Yeah,
else.
no. But I suppose you can't really end on a child getting beaten up and rolled down. And you're like, is he dead?
Conveniently, though, the garbage can stops rolling
Yeah.
outside the Simpson house.
Like
He gets a free
that's
lift home.
free lift home. Like that's better than the bus kind of thing. And you know, a weary Bart stumbles out and he's heading inside and he walks past Marge and Homer in the living room and he heads to the bathroom to cry. And poor Bart, yeah. So Marge is like, oh, Homer, go up and console him. And at the sight of his son, Bart's there crying, really like weird animation again, like the way he's crying.
This is season 1, so it's inconsistent.
Yeah. I think that's a thing that apparently Matt Groening hates in Simpsons is like the characters crying because he's always complaining about the animation.
Oh, he's never happy with any animation, is he?
He's like, you do it then, Matt. But yeah, so apparently just like in the commentary he doesn't like, he's like, oh, tears, oh, can never do tears right. So yeah, so Homer gets like, it's Bart's actually genuinely very upset in the scene, and Homer offers, he's like, there Bart, dry them tears, and he then sticks a big hairdryer in Bart's face, causing Bart's face to like flap backwards and everything. And Marge is eavesdropping on the conversation, and when she hears bully, like Bart's like, oh, I'm being bullied, whatever, and she's kind of there and she's trying to give Bart advice, and she's like, oh, why don't you go to the principal? And Homer's like, oh no, you snitching violates the schoolyard code and all this L stuff as well.
Homer understands the schoolyard code.
Especially boys, I suppose.
Marge is trying to get him to take a softer approach, like talk to Nelson.
Yeah, it's like, oh, is he a bit on the chunky side? He's like, oh yeah, he's huge.
Yeah.
It's like, and does he struggle at school? He's the dumbest kid around, kind of thing. And Marge's like, well, there you go. You know, he's got issues that, you know, you got to sympathize with people like this. And kind of, you know, she's just kind of saying, oh, just try and be nice to him, basically, and talk nicely to him, and maybe things will settle out that way, like a gentleman.
Yeah, that's gentleman's agreement.
Gentleman's agreement. No duels at dawn or anything like this. Homer disagrees though, and he takes Bart into a random room in the house. Like, they have so many rooms.
This is like the Flanders house that they remake later on,
Yeah.
except in season 1 it's like the actual house that they live in.
It's like a nice little like playroom, and he's like, right, we're going to fight dirty. You need to
He
beat
said,
him up.
us Simpsons need to learn how to fight dirty. We don't have the best advantage.
No, so he has this big thing. He has this big punching bag, and he's like, pretend that's Nelson, and give it a good kick, and he's like, kick it in the family jewels. And he goes over, and Homer's taking this big bite out of the punching bag. He's like, "Rrr, rrr."
There was going to be a extra animation in this scene where the eyes on the punching bag reacts to Homer hitting it.
I remember that actually from the
Um,
commentary.
And they scrapped that, so they did.
It'd be too.
Because they said it was too wacky for the Simpsons. Like,
Yeah, like the punching bag reacting to it, like, ugh.
it's like something from Popeye or something.
Oh, yeah, I'm glad they got rid of that.
So the next day after school, Bart meets Nelson again, and he flings the mud in his eyes as
Yeah.
per Homer's advice.
Yeah, to play dirty. And literally playing dirty if he's like throwing muck.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work. So Nelson beats up Bart again, and he shoves his hat into his mouth and throws him like into another trash can, rolls it away.
Lands at the Simpsons house again, though.
Yeah, it's Nelson with his public transport kind of.
Get him in Ireland.
And then so once again the trash can rolls to a stop outside the house, and Bart spits out the hat, and Lisa's sitting there on the sidewalk, and she's like, oh, Bart, maybe you need to go to Grandpa, Grandpa Simpson, get his advice, because
Put up such a good fight that when they
This-
were putting him in the retirement home.
yeah, this cantankerous old man, he's like, you ain't taking me away. And in desperation, Bart visits Grandpa, and so Grandpa, we see Grandpa here. Now, we've seen him before in the Christmas episode, but this is kind of the first time I think you get an idea of Grandpa's like backstory and who he is. So
Usually in future episodes, you see him in the retirement home anyway, and this is
yeah,
the first time we see him here, is it?
yeah, and then you kind of see what a miserable man he is.
Yeah.
And he's pounding away, typing up this big angry letter on the typewriter. And he's demanding to, I don't know, media executives or something, executives. He's like, oh, like stop portraying old people as these sex maniacs. He's like, it's like, here's a list of words I never want to hear on television again. Number 1, bra. Number 2, horny. The way he pronounces it is very strange as well. And he's like, and then number 3, family jewels.
He's mad to get TV as conservative and inoffensive as possible.
Yeah, I know, like TV in the 80s must have been getting a bit wild.
Oh, they're saying family jewels everywhere.
Golden Girls, maybe. And then, like, funny enough, actually, so Homer actually does mention the family jewels earlier in the episode. And this episode had problems with the censors who did not want the characters to say family jewels on primetime television, but the producers totally ignored the notes and it remained in the episode.
It was crazy 90s.
Yeah, the censors were going crazy. But it's reminiscent, I think. I don't know if it's meant to be, but it's kind of reminiscent of, so there was this, the 7 dirty words, so 7 English language curse words that American comedian George Carlin, he was kind of like a sort of very controversial comedian.
Kind of.
Yeah, I think like he's aged quite well. It's just that he was
definitely.
very, yeah, he's not like, it wasn't that he was like kind of like he'd be cancelled or anything nowadays. It's just, I think he was just so out of there, really.
At the time as well, it was like so
He
unreal.
brought up, I think he did like controversial subject matter. So he has this very famous thing, so in 1972, so it was 7 words you can never say on television, so a monologue he had, and the words in the order of like Carlin listed them. So how I go about this, words
Just
that rhyme.
hit it.
Yeah, so I'm going to say
Hit.
hit, is,
Uck.
uck, unt.
See you next Tuesday.
Yeah, see you next Tuesday, basically. Uck sucker.
Other ucker.
Other ucker, yeah, that's a good one. And
It's.
so a couple of
I
big
think we
its.
did pretty good there, Duff Beer. The
Yeah.
monetization is still alive for this episode.
We don't want to get censored. So yeah, I just think that's, I don't know, maybe that was the writers were like, oh yeah, that George Carlin thing. So Grandpa tells Bart to just stand up for yourself. But then an elderly neighbor is named Jasper. So we all know Jasper. Jasper's the big long-haired, the beardy guy that's always hanging around with Grandpa.
Jasper.
That's your paddling. So he barges into Grandpa's room. He's like, Simpson, give me your newspaper. I want to do the crossword. And Grandpa's like, no. And they have a little tug of war over the newspaper. And like poor Grandpa, like
Jasper wins pretty easily.
yeah, it's very pathetic. And then he's like, maybe stand up to yourself might not work. So Grandpa's like, right, no, I know a friend, that might be able to help us. So Grandpa recommends enlisting the help of Herman. He's one man, that Herman.
Best characters introduced so far.
Yeah, so Herman is a one-armed nut job who owns a military antique store and sells like things like Nazi underwear and that. And this is a great introduction. So the design of Herman actually, except he has his 2 arms. Well, no, sorry, he has 1 arm. So he was inspired by the look of writer John Swartzwelder, so the guy that wrote the episode.
So they took John Swartzwelder and they said we're going to make him a one-armed war crazy nut.
How flattering. And then so the original idea with Herman was that every time he'd be shown, he would have a different story why he only has 1 arm. Because apparently he had 2 arms.
That's a really good idea. I wish that they did that.
Yeah, because
it
you
would have
kind
been a
of
good running gag, kind of.
Yeah, you kind of just assume, he must have either been born with it or he lost it during a war, but no, it's never really explained. So Bart does ask him, what happened to your arm, and he's like told
he stuck it out the window of a moving bus and it got ripped off by a truck or so. And it's also implied that he was maybe the one Miss Krabappel was like talking about when she was telling Bart in like Homer's Odyssey, you know, oh, kid lost his arm sticking it out that way, and
Simpsons lore.
And actually funny, in apparently in the Czech dub of The Simpsons, so Herman's like just outright a Nazi, like he's just totally outright. Like in this, he's like, oh, he's a bit of a kind of, conservative nut job guy, but in this Czech one, it's asked, oh, how did he lose his arm? And it's like,
never stick it out, never hail Hitler while
never do a Hitler salute
out of a moving bus.
So there's absolutely like
no questions about his.
Because like, I would say, Herman would definitely be a member of like QAnon nowadays or something. Yeah. He's definitely, you get the vibes of that.
Alt-right kind of like.
Yeah, and like apparently like in the later seasons, I think it actually shows how he got his arm ripped off. I think he was just hailing like a hitch in their lift or something, and it got ripped off kind of by Chief Wiggum apparently. Just driving.
I like the way they left it open for the earlier episode. Like.
That's too reminiscent of like, I told that idiot to slice my sandwich. Poor Kirk Van Houten or something. But and
he's kind of been replaced in later episodes, Herman, hasn't he?
Herman,
very minor role compared
I don't
to
know
what you think.
why they kind of downgraded Herman, because he's introduced so early in The Simpsons that you're kind of, and obviously he was going to have like little backstories and running jokes, and it's just kind of a shame that he doesn't really appear anymore. Like he's kind of appeared in, in the Springfield, the one Springfield Connection, where Marge she becomes a cop, and Herman is like selling the counterfeit jeans. Remember out of the garage?
Yeah. Is it like he's relegated to very minor roles, isn't
very
he? Like
minor.
montages of like people around Springfield or something.
Yeah, like he's total background character.
Or as you said, that little scene where he's selling the counterfeit stuff. Like,
and he's
like
also
a 2-second scene or something.
Yeah, remember he like holds Snake and Chief Wiggum hostage.
Oh yeah,
and
I love that.
So dark. It's like, in reference to like Zed in Pulp Fiction. He's like,
so dark.
And he's like, are they gonna rape Chief Wiggum? What's going on? And so I think now he's been kind of replaced by Wise Guy. So Wise Guy's the guy, hey, you gonna pay for...
You blew my mind when you told me that he has a name.
Oh yeah, it's like, so Wise Guy is actually called Raphael. That's his actual, like, he's kind of known as sarcastic clerk or wise guy or middle-aged man, which is so boring. But he actually does have a name, like Raphael. And then he's like, so he's a total recurring character, but like background character. But his main purpose is kind of like, he sells things or random. He's just sort of that go-to, he's selling these things. Because like, and also his voice is often used in loudspeaker announcements. But like Herman... There's the episode where, when Homer's buying the guns, and you would just assume, Herman would be selling guns, but it's Wise Guy.
That was a weird one, because he's usually like he gets sleazy Wise Guy, but he's usually still legit.
Yeah, and like I know he did sell Homer, remember in one of the Treehouse of Horror episodes where he sells in the bomb shelter, and Homer's the last man alive then.
Kind of a con man, like,
yeah. And now like even the seediness, so obviously like that dark kind of thing in Pulp Fiction parody, but like Mo is now the go-to seedy guy, because Mo has all these like random things happening in the bar, like Russian roulette, like the Vietnam Russian roulette, and he has like random little whales.
Or he go
panda bears
crazy and pull the shotgun out, like...
Yeah, he has someone literally, like, Mole Man hiding under the floorboards. Help me.
Grab his machete and run.
Yeah. I'm gonna kill. And it's just like, Herman is just... yeah. And he's there, like, even... He was initially, I think, tied in with the devil. Remember the earlier kind of character of the devil, and he looked like Herman, he sounded
I
like
thought it
Herman.
literally was Herman when I was
Yeah.
younger.
And then you're like, no, and then the devil's changed shape, like then he became Ned Flanders, and
I think he's a great character in this. I think the potential was there for him to be involved a lot more.
yeah. And yeah, and
Especially as the writing gets stronger in the seasons following season 1, he could have been great.
oh, I miss him. And he kind of, he's just sort of, he feels like maybe the Simpsons just wasn't his place, really. Like that maybe dark humor. Simpsons is good at dark humor though sometimes. Like
You were saying Duffy Beer that he feels like a King of the Hill character.
yeah, he feels like more he could be in King the Hill. Like definitely just like you there, you're like, you guys want to buy this? And they're like, oh, Herman, will you get out of here?
The Hill is like, what you got, excellent.
Yeah.
So Herman's telling Bart that he needs to gather a small army together.
Yeah, they need to devise a plan. So, like, Bart decides to enlist all of Nelson's other victims, all the other kids he bullies.
He sends a note around the class telling anybody who's been victimized by Nelson in the past that to come to a meeting in the treehouse.
Yeah, and then it's like, so all the kids actually do turn up to the treehouse, and they're like, where's Bart? And then Bart just walks in, and after being beaten up again, and he coughs up his red hat, his lucky red hat. And he just
hangs it on the wall and starts talking.
It's a really funny visual gag where he's just like hangs up on the wall, like doesn't address it all.
It's just kind of like, oh, I'm used to this happening now.
He's like, yeah. He's like, my fellow kids. And so yeah, he's there and he's rallying all the others and encourages them to join his plan to attack Nelson. And he's like, I can't promise you victory and I can't promise you good times. And they're all like, screw this.
And they all start walking out.
And he's like, no, hold on.
I can't promise you victory.
I can't promise you good times. Yeah. So then they all agree. And so then, Herman now is going to teach them military tactics. So it's a whole montage of all these army marches and
they're getting
drills.
drilled for the war against Nelson.
Yeah, and Bart's like this drill sergeant. And Herman's there. There's like a big bean bag or a big sandbag. And Herman's coming with a bayonet. And he's like, die! And he's stabbing him. He's taking all his like war flashbacks out on it. And Bart's becoming a like mini-size version of the George S. Passion, so the General. So yeah, so this kind of the episodes kind of plays tribute to a lot of war films, such as Passion.
We watched Patton as research for this Duffy Beer,
didn't we? We did, yeah. It was one I've always wanted to watch, and just I never like I had seen the scenes of, say, there's a very famous, the opening is so famous of Passion, played by George C. Scott, and he's standing delivering this big speech, and it's a very iconic like movie speech, and even like The Simpsons, it's the one where you put your hand into a pile of goo, you realize that's your best friend's face, you'll know what to do. And
this episode like is the first one to directly reference movies and Patton. There's like a lot of like parody 1-to-1 shots kind of.
Yeah, like it totally plays homage. And so you have, say, with Passion, then you also have
Full Metal
Jacket, and
Patton, it literally lifts the score of Patton, doesn't it?
Yeah, the soundtrack, because so the soundtrack is actually used in this episode. It's a very famous kind of like trumpet kind of do. And because obviously Simpsons is owned by Fox, so Fox owned the rights to Passion because Passion was, Fox. So they were able to use the soundtrack, no problem. They were meant to use I think the writers wanted to use War, that song, War. Huh.
What is it good for?
Oh, absolutely none. And then it's like, so War by Edwin Starr, and they were meant to use that, and then they're like, oh, it doesn't really fit the vibe, man. So they had Passion, and Patton fits in really well, like as a little soundbite. And Patton's like composed by Jerry Goldsmith, the music. But it's just, it's...
So the guy that plays Patton as well, Duffy Beer, George C. Scott,
George
he makes an appearance later on in The Simpsons as a character, doesn't he?
Yeah, no, it's not the real George C. Scott, but it's George C. Scott. So he's famous for Passion, but
There's another masterpiece that transcends
an
Patton.
absolute cinematic masterpiece. So kind of, I would say, a remake of a very famous starring Hans Moleman.
Think of Hans Moleman's biggest ever masterpiece.
Biggest hit, yeah. Man getting hit by football. So where it's like
George C. Scott is in the remake at the end of that episode, and he gets hit, and it's like, my groin.
Yeah, my groin. It's like a little boing, boing. And another fun fact about Passion, it was not directed by Richard Nixon. It was Richard Nixon's favorite film.
Favorite movie.
Yeah, which I find funny because it's like, did Richard Nixon see it as like a really jingoistic, patriotic movie?
This is what America's all about.
He's just like, I don't know, it's kind of an anti-war movie, really. It's kind of, I think it could be one of those movies where you take it out of context and you're like, that's a real patriotic movie.
It could be watched as that, but I think it's also, this guy wasn't exactly
a nice guy.
He's a hero, but he was
I think
bad guy too.
A bad guy, yeah. But like, even, and then there's other scenes. So say you have the scenes with the kids at the jungle gym, and like it's a silhouette, and that's from Full Metal Jacket. So there's which is also like an anti-war movie, really. So there's just a lot of kind of cool references. It was kind of one of the first time the Simpsons directly just did references and like did full on parody.
Because later on it's like commonplace to see a parody of like a famous movie, or
because it just does, even the scene where the kid's having a freak out and Bart comes along. The kid's obviously freaking out and he's like, oh, I don't think I can do this, and Bart slaps him in the face for being a disgrace, and that's, I think, a direct reference to Patton
the movie,
where he smacks one of his own men that's having like a PTSD incident.
And then, as you said, the silhouettes kind of training is a reference to Full Metal Jacket
and even like kind of the scene of Bart with his glasses, like his sunglasses, and it's that is very Full Metal Jacket. And so then it's really good. It's kind of just so early on, really. So
Herman is commanding from inside the treehouse.
Yeah, and the day is the day. Then they're going to actually attack Nelson. So Nelson's coming out of the Quickie Marsh, and he's getting like a slushie, which he tends to do they kind of know his whereabouts, and they can track where he's coming from and that. So they have their commence saturation bombing. So it's just with water balloons.
Just throwing loads of water
balloons.
Let's
say happy birthday, which is a big issue for Herman. He's like, I'd rather they say like
death from above.
Death from above or whatever. So then Nelson is there, and he's walking out with his minions, and they're drinking their little slushies, and one minute's like, oh, what flavor is yours? Blue. And so they're being just water bombed, basically. All these water balloons are coming down, and
it's kind of tame for a lad's fight, isn't it?
Oh,
like
totally.
You said, Duffy Beer be like punches and kicks and
yeah, it'd just be like they'd be battered. It'd be like kids would die probably if you had like a little, like I don't know, just a little army of 10-year-old boys.
Wouldn't just be water balloons.
It'd be savage. Oh, like they're the worst. 10-year-old boys are the worst. That kind of age.
I know.
They want to break things. They just want to
kick things.
Ugh. But Nelson's captured, and then there's this like kind of dark kind of allusion to Nuremberg trials where Nelson's cronies are just like, they just claim, oh, we were just following orders, and you're like, oh gosh. And then so Nelson's captured, and then again, so there's another kind of parody here, or just sort of allusion really to, there's the iconic VJ Day in Times Square photograph, so in 1945, so that would have been in Life magazine. So everyone kind of knows it's the sort of sailor, and he's holding
the woman, and he's holding her down.
Yeah, he's holding her, and
giving her a big smooch.
Yeah, and he's there, and it's like, so this boy comes over and grabs Lisa and gives her a big smooch, and she slaps him in the face. So I just find it funny though, this photograph. So the guy in the photograph was a sailor in real life, And the story goes apparently that he was in the cinema, he was on a date with another woman, so who would become his future wife. And they're in the cinema watching the film, and then next thing, someone runs in and announces, "Oh, the war's over." And they all go out into the street, and they're all kind of like celebrating. And he sees this woman in a white dress, who he assumes to be a nurse, because nurses were like so popular because they were like, you know,
Very
seen as
important during
heroes
the
and
war,
that.
yeah.
And this woman was actually a dental assistant, and but anyway, he grabbed her and he just gave her a big smooch. And in the photograph, the woman,
So this wasn't his date, Duffy
this
Beer.
wasn't his date. This is a random woman who he didn't even know, and the woman just said he just came over and grabbed her and kissed her. And I think he had done it to a few women as well, but this is the most famous.
This is the one that the Life magazine photographer got.
Yeah, and you know, I don't know, I think she should have given him a bit of a slap. Well, I think his date definitely should have. I don't condone slapping, but non-consensual.
It's not a great date, is it?
No, kind of like, oh, remember our first date when you went over?
Gave a big passionate smooch.
Yeah, and yeah, so that's just another funny reference to that, really.
So even the lady might have given him a slap for that, and Lisa definitely gave this guy a
Lisa
slap.
gave him a piece of her mind. She was like, knock it off. Get him, Lisa. And so, you know, Bart now wheels Nelson. Nelson's tied up and wheels him back to the Simpson house. And Nelson's threatening to beat Bart up as soon as he's untied. And Bart's like, you know,
Well, I just won't untie you.
I won't untie you. It's like, you're going to have to untie me sometime. So then Herman draws up a peace treaty between Bart and Nelson, which they both sign. And it's all kind of like, Nelson recognizes its right to exist. And
Nelson shall have no official power. He shall remain a figurehead of menace in the neighborhood. So very geopolitical style
very...
document where both Bart and Nelson get to keep their some form of autonomy.
autonomy, yeah. And Nelson's still going to be like, I'm still seen as a
bully in the
bully.
neighborhood.
He maintains his pride. And so then Bart and Nelson signed a treaty, and Marge serves up cupcakes and peace prevails. But they're kind of like muffins again.
Yeah, it's like back to the start when Lisa had
It's
the
the same-
cupcakes. It was
yeah.
muffins.
Same recipe.
These
Someone...
Americans don't know what a cupcake from a
Yeah,
muffin.
cupcakes meant to
Sorry
have,
guys
like-
if you're from America, but
Well, I don't know. I assume like cupcakes in America are like, you know, frosting and that.
muffins like a chunkier breakfast muffins.
Yeah, with blueberry. And so
This-
that's...
This is like the first ending of the episode. There's another epilogue kind of after,
Hmm.
but this ends the storyline, and it's another kind of a season one style. Everything just wraps up very neatly, and it's kind of underwhelming a little bit.
Yeah, just they're
There's
all
no
like...
punchline to the whole episode, like or anything.
No, and they're all just doing like a kind of like, and then it just has like a little music cue, do do do, and like it ends. It's very cheesy, really, but it kind of ends. Then the proper ending then is this epilogue. So
cuts to Bart in the library.
yeah, Bart's sitting on a table and he's like, oh. He tells the audience, you know, on the contrary to the events of the episode, war is neither glamorous nor fun. He states like there's no winners in war, and there's no, you know, there's no good wars with the exceptions of the American Revolution, World War II, and the Star Wars trilogy. And then he's like, oh, if you want to learn about more about wars, you can go to your local library, and there's pictures with books or pictures with books with pictures about war and gruesome
Lots of
stuff.
cool, gruesome pictures.
Yeah,
It's a real kind of G.I. Joe style.
PSA.
You know, when it cuts to like them and they're like breaking the fourth wall, like, oh, don't climb your tree to save your cat. Get your local hero fireman.
Yeah, and it's so cheesy. It's like, oh, thanks, G.I. Joe. It's like, oh, the more you know. And even, it's just like, and visit your local library. It just feels like kind of the censors were like, no, we can't have this episode where there was all this fighting and war references. We can't give the wrong
Adult
idea.
movie references, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's like, I guess like season one, they were throwing a lot of different, you can see a lot of different ideas. Nothing was really finalised, and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like this was in the open, whereas in season two on, like, this just would not happen.
No. And it'd be...
Unless it was a real on-the-nose joke, kind of.
Yeah, that it's too sincere, really. And I do think it kind of, the way say it's like, oh, there's no good wars, and then it mentions the American Revolution and World War II, which are very American jingoistic kind of style things, and it's like, it's like,
And the Star Wars trilogy.
it's Star Wars trilogy, and I definitely disagree.
Well, which trilogy?
Which
It's
trilogy,
aged pretty
Bart?
badly.
Because this is 1990, so the prequels don't exist. So this is a
No.
bit awkward now, isn't it? Very dated reference. But yeah, I don't know. I think the parody stuff is funny and like, coming up to the ending, and then it's so neutered. Then it feels so anticlimactic after that thing.
This
Even
weird, sincere message. kinda.
yeah, but I'll probably get more to that now when we get into the ranking.
Yeah.
Excellent.
All right, so it's time to rank Bart the General.
Mhm.
Put it to war with the ranking system and
Get
see who comes out. I don't think that really works, that joke, but let's get on with it. So the ranking system is as follows. We've got these categories. We rank each category on a scale of 1 to 3, and then we get the overall and put that into our tier list to separate the duds from the all-time classics.
Mm-hmm.
So the first rank that we've got is emotion. How does it tug on the old heartstrings? There's someone cutting onions, is there a tear or something in the episodes? Simpsons can get quite emotional at times.
Yeah. We all know like Mother Simpson episodes and
Yeah, there's a lot of very heartfelt moments. A lot of good lessons in some of them.
mm-hmm.
The next category is self-explanatory. It's laughs. So, The Simpsons is a comedy show for most people. First and foremost, it's very funny. So basically, if it's a 3 in laughs, then it stitches the whole way through it. If it's a 1, then you probably come out more annoyed than.
Yeah.
If it's a 2, then you probably had a good smile on your face the whole way through it.
Yeah.
A couple of chuckles. The next category that we've got is lines. So this is obviously it's one of the most quotable shows ever, and lines is pretty much, what lines are remembered, what lines do you use throughout life and stuff, kind of just like quoting it off
What's
with the
going to
odd
be
jokes.
on my epitaph or something?
Exactly, yeah. And then the next one and the final one is story.
Mm-hmm.
So how does the episode flow in a 3-arc structure? Is the story compelling and good, or is it like the newer Simpsons where it's just a lot of kind of mishmash gobbledygook?
Oh. Sometimes I read the Wikipedia pages for an episode and I don't know where. I'm just sort of like, what's happened? What?
All of those ones would just be a 1 or a
I
0
think
maybe
so.
for story. So let's put Bart the General into these 4 categories, and Duffy Beer, you can do the reviewing for us. So
Okay.
for emotion, what are we giving it?
Emotion. So the episode, it's a light episode, and I know Bart's being bullied, which is very dark topic, obviously, and it is kind of upsetting seeing Bart, you feel sorry for him, but it's not, I don't know, I don't think the story itself is too dramatic really, in the sense of like it feels like it's escalating kind of with bullying.
It's that very 90s TV show bullying,
Yeah.
where like in the 90s, bullying was just very nonchalant storylines.
It was just
TV
always,
shows, like,
yeah, it's like, oh, that's just a thing that happens. It's
yeah,
like,
it's a part of growing up.
oh, it's our neighborhood bully.
Yeah.
But like, the episode, even like say there's the episode where Lisa gets bullied. Do you remember that episode?
Yeah.
And I always found that was actually a lot more upsetting.
I think this episode isn't really trying to say anything with the bullying message or
No.
that. And even with the Lisa cupcake things, it's not that heartfelt really. Like,
No. And it's the thing where I know Bart's crying in the bathtub and he's there with his ugly face. Like, but I feel sorry for Bart, but I'm not too emotionally invested, to be honest. I think it is a light episode. So I think I'll give it a 1.
1 for emotion. I think that sounds right to me. Yeah.
Mm.
It's just nothing. You could imagine if it was a later episode, they probably would have dealt with the darker themes a bit more, and there would have been more relationship between Bart and Lisa in the episode or something. But
Yeah.
in this one, it's just kind of, as you said, it's light. It's the bullying is the crux of the storyline, but most of it is kind of like funny little neighborhood warfare kind of thing.
Yeah, it uses bullying to tell the story really, and yeah, I don't feel the same thing with Bart's just sort of like, oh geez, that's tough, but that's about it. But yeah,
So the next category that we've got is laughs. How are we ranking it into laugh, Stuffy Beer? Some good moments.
it's all Herman. It's all Herman carries his back must be in bits carrying the weight
this episode.
of this episode.
I think it's the best character introduction for a while anyway.
Yeah, and you can just tell the potential of Herman. It's just a shame they never got back to him. But I think the best bit with Herman is like the scene of him stabbing the punching bag with the bayonet, and he's like yelling, "Die, die!"
And I
And
think it's just because it's all the wee kids are having to go at the punch a bag, and then it's like Herman's just die, die.
I'm a big sucker for like someone like even Homer tearing bites out of. I love just when people get really primal. I find something when people just go full on psychotic. I find that very funny.
Poor
in The
punch a
Simpsons.
bag had a little face on it.
Yeah, and he's like, ooh. I think, to be honest, that's the only thing I remember of this episode.
Yeah, just
laughing.
everything about Herman's great. Bits in the shop are great with him.
Yeah. I think, but that's really, I like, as I said, the bit where Bart's coughing up his hat. A lot of visual jokes in this episode. And yeah, so I give it 3. You know what? I give it 3.
Yeah, some of the bits of Homer show him as well, like just talking about how the Simpsons like need to fight 30 sometimes, and then he
Yeah.
goes to Grandpa and Jasper comes in and steals you. It's just a weird absurdity to it or something.
And even just, there's Herman in his antique shop, in his weapon shop and everything. It's a funny setup.
His black market shop.
Yeah. So I give it 3.
Definitely, that's a good ranking for that. So the next category that we've got is lines, Duffy Beer. Is there much memorable happening here?
And this is where I think I'm being maybe a bit harsh. I find that there's potential jokes here, and then it's just the timing's off. So everything, I find that it's more, as I said, the visual jokes are a big thing. So I can't re-quote them, obviously. And then I find that because it's kind of trying to be a parody the whole time, you have passion and the Full Metal Jacket and that. It's just, it's more visual things, very visual striking kind of things. I don't find anything actually, apart from say Herman saying "die, die," which you can't really. I don't find there's anything really memorable in a way.
I think there's not much quotes.
Like say, the way with passion, say Homer quotes passion in the marriage counseling episode, and that's what I think of when I think of passion. That was my first introduction to passion, actually.
Yeah, and that's funny because like this episode is literally a direct parody of it, and you still think of the marriage counseling.
I still think of you put your hand in a pile of goo.
Get your best friend's face.
Yeah, and then I have to say, because of that, and also the cringy bad ending, that PSA is what I like kind of do remember from this episode, and just the ending monologue. I don't think if that wasn't in the episode, I'd probably be a bit more forgiving, but that's all I remember, to be honest. It's like, oh, go to your local library, and you're like, oh.
Yeah, it's not great. So I think that then segues us nicely into the last category, story.
Yeah.
So what did you think of the story, Duffy Beer, and did the ending badly impact the story for you?
So yeah, it's like if I gave lines 1, story probably will get a 2 from me, to be honest, because the episode flows well except for the ending with the PSA, and the ending ruined the episode for me. So I find, do you know the way the episode, it was already apparently long enough, and
well, they had to cut the intro, didn't they?
They cut in the intro, they cut the whole chalkboard gag and everything, and it felt then this ending was shoehorned in, and I'm just going, why include it? Because the episode, I wouldn't mind if the episode just ended on them eating the little cupcakes at the end.
I think you're right about maybe did like Fox get involved or something.
Yeah.
And the Simpsons didn't. Obviously, this was the first season, so they didn't have much like creative power. Like they weren't sure how it would land. So was Fox like worried about making a cartoon that would be
Mm.
having all these war references and stuff from mature movies as well.
Yeah.
It's actually interesting to think of like Full Metal Jacket would have been a new film when this episode came out.
Because,
You'd think it and Patton were like both kind of classics at the time, but Patton was a classic at the time, but Full Metal Jacket was
Patton was
3 years old.
1970, and then Full Metal was like 1987, and this episode was out like would have been written 1989. So that's a very bold kind of early reference, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting.
So
But yeah, the story was like good, like it was flowed well, as you said, especially compared to some of the other episodes that we did, like the No Disgrace one or Homer's Odyssey, where the story's all over the place. This one is like a proper
like it starts
start
with
to
him,
finish
yeah.
storyline.
It starts straight away. He's being bullied, and then there's this big rise up against Nelson. It's an interesting kind of, obviously there's other episodes then when they, even the Camp Krusty one or something like that, where they rise against the bullies there, and I think, you know what, it is good. I think it's a strong enough story, but just the ending, it just like it makes me so angry.
It makes you not want to go to your local library and read it more. Just the opposite effect.
It's like I ain't. Yeah.
So Duffy Beer, we're giving it a 1 for emotion then,
Mm-hmm.
a 3 for laughs, a 1 for lines, and a 2 for story.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a 7 out of 12 or a 3 out of 5 on our ranking scale.
That's not bad.
I think that sounds fair.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see where this goes onto our tier list then. So within our tier list, we've got 5 categories. So for the bad episodes, we've got the dud. For episodes that are a bit better than that, not still great though, we've got craptacular. For okay episodes, we've got oakley dokily. For good episodes, we've got chock full of heady goodness. And for really great best ever episodes, we've got groin-grabbingly transcendent.
Oh my goodness.
So I think it's probably a good time to do a recap, Duffy Beer, of our tier list.
We've gone through, this is now our 5th episode, so woo.
Woohoo!
So we've already had, so our first 2 episodes, the Simpsons roasting episode and Bart the Genius, we've had them in the chock full of heady goodness. So that was a very good start.
Really strong start to
Wasn't
the
it?
season.
Yeah. And it kind of dipped a wee bit. So then we had Homer's Odyssey, which went into the dud category.
I think that could be the worst one for a while. It could be on its own for a while.
Poor Homer's Odyssey. And then we had the last episode, so No Disgrace Like Home, that was in the craptacular one.
So let's see then, where will Bart the General go? So judging by the kind of ranking that we gave it, a 7 out of 12 or a 3 out of 5, I think it could be the first one to go into oakley dokily, would it be?
Oakley dokily.
Oakley dokily.
Yeah, oakley dokily. So that's fine. It's a fine episode. And when you think of it again, we're in the first season, and it's amazing how this season even exists, how this show exists.
With all of the production problems and stuff.
There's been issues and everything, and you're like this, and you can see just the vision and the potential. And we will see probably, a lot of these storylines will be recycled or, just
concepts kind of.
Yeah. We're getting there. So not bad, Bart the General, not bad.
As you said, there is glimpses, isn't there, of like, looking back in retrospect, especially when the golden age of The Simpsons has already happened and we've grown up with it, like there is glimpses in season 1 of what it can become.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
So give this episode an honourable discharge.
Honourable discharge, yeah. So oakley dokily.
You've served your time.
So another thing that we like to do in the ranking is that we're both big music nuts.
Mm-hmm.
And we like to pick out a song that, if you could imagine like an AMV,
music
a
video,
a wee montage, that's something that we'd love to play around with maybe someday. That's a bit ambitious.
When you can visualize it, like I don't know how to do things.
Especially for this one. What song have you got for us today, Duffy Beer? It's an exciting one.
Yeah, I hope yous are feeling angsty. It's So I have a little band you might know, the Rage Against the Machine, not Florence and the Machine, Rage Against the Machine,
Rage Against It.
and it's Know Your Enemy. Know Your Enemy.
All of which are American dreams.
All of which are American dreams.
Oh, it's a banger.
Cause I'll rip the mic, rip the stage, rip the system. I
was born to rage against
them. Fist in your face. I think so. This Rage Against the Machine are obviously very politically themed band.
Very charged band.
Yeah.
They're about standing up to bullies, I would say.
I would say so. The system is the biggest bully.
Nelson's the system in
Nelson
this
is
episode.
the system. Yeah. Like they're great. They're so kind of funky in a way, but
it's like rock funk.
You're like rock funk. You're like proper
rock and or funk.
And like Rage Against the Machine. Do you know what my first introduction to Rage Against the Machine was? There was years ago. The show The X Factor, and they would have a Christmas #1. So for years it just monopolized the whole Christmas season, really. And there was a huge campaign then, just an ironic kind of thing, really, to have the most non-Christmassy or just some other song. And someone suggested Rage Against the Machine, and what happened was it was voted in the #1 song that Christmas. So people, I don't even think they played it then.
I think they ignored it.
They ignored it.
No crack.
No crack. And they're like, say BBC Radio 1 were like, oh, we're not playing that.
Yeah.
The granny. And there was such a, all these people were like, oh, I can't imagine the granny listening to this. This is disgraceful. And yeah, just a load of crap, really. So Rage Against the Machine won with, they had the song Killing in the Name of. Killing in the Name of. And that was the loveliest Christmas #1 that year.
Oh, it would have been so cool if they just played it. If they listened to the people. That's what Tom Morello was trying to say. Listen to the people.
Listen to people. And, well, they didn't, I think when Margaret Thatcher died, and they had Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead, and that was voted #1 song that week.
And did they play that?
And they didn't play it, no. They just, they were like, no, ignore everything.
Oh.
That's enough of that. So, so it was, instead of like a cover of Miley Cyrus's Climb, it was Killing in the Name of, which was better.
Way better.
My grandmother would have preferred that, I'd say.
I think, definitely. I think most grandmothers would.
Yeah. Getting a bit, with a brandy, and they're like, yeah.
This is a very good choice though, Duffy Beer. Know Your Enemy.
Know Your Enemy.
I can definitely see the montage if we had it of like Herman running over and stabbing
it, die, and then it'd be like all the balloons, the war balloons are coming down, and it's just like the lyrics go something like amp up and amplify, defy, and it's like I'm a brother with a furious mind. And I just imagine Bart getting rolled, and he's like,
action must be taken.
Action.
We don't need the key, we'll break it.
No, you're right. It would fit so well. And also, again, the song itself and the band, politically themed and kind of like revolutionary lyrical content.
Anti-war band.
The album cover is horrible. So it's a real cover, it's a real photograph of, it's that famous Vietnamese monk performing self-immolation during the Vietnam War, so like in the 1960s. And obviously, there's a commentary using that. It's not just like kind of like, oh, here's this edgy kind of like, oh, this is controversial.
Look at our crazy album cover.
Yeah, but Rage Against the Machine there was substance to it now. And you would also like it, Dillhouse, because the guy from Tool's on it.
Yeah, I love Tool.
Yeah.
I loved Rage Against the Machine growing up as well, actually. My dad always had the albums.
That's why you're very angsty.
Yeah, my dad, I had a young dad, so he was like very in with all these kind of bands and stuff that were coming out in the 90s.
My dad preferred the Eagles. More chill, hippie kind of vibes. But so I think it would go so well with the kids marching, and I think it just would fit. It would fit it so well.
I just
And like I said, they're anti-war. We
Mhm.
said that, and the parodies of the episode is parodying like Full Metal Jacket
yeah.
and even Patton. They're both anti-war movies.
Yeah, I would say so.
Well, Full Metal Jacket is massively anti-war.
Yeah.
So it does. There's a good connection there. I think there's a great pick, Duffy Bear.
Oh. So add it to the playlist.
Add it to the. We get the Cromulent Craic playlist going.
It's gonna vary
Yeah.
so much. Oh.
So yeah, so overall an Oakley Dokley episode.
Yeah.
Next time we'll be checking out Moaning Lisa, I think.
Moaning Lisa.
It's a bit of a change from Know Your Enemy and all the kind of war, Harriman and all the war stuff.
I know Lisa would definitely, I would feel she would listen to these kind of right in. No, she'd be more of a Joey Mitchell kind of one, I think.
Maybe, although she would dabble in later on in seasons, maybe she'd probably dabble into Rage Against the Machine and
You know, her when she is in her vegetarian kind
Buddhist, maybe pre-Buddhist.
of. But yeah, I think that's it. So yeah, Oakley Dokley episode.
Oakley Dokley episode.
So just make sure go to your local libraries and read about war.
The good ones like Star Wars trilogy,
Wars
and
trilogy.
American Civil War and World War II.
Woohoo. But I think that's ourselves then.
That's it for another episode. So hi diddly ho.
It's time to go.
Do 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 do. Shh.